Good day, grade 7 students. We are now in quarter 3, week 3, with the topic influence of culture, history, environment, or other factors in literary selection. At the end of the lesson, you are able to familiarize on the history, culture, and environment of different literary selection. Read stories and enhance critical analysis on how story, culture, environment, and other factors influence the literary selection. And lastly, explain how a selection may be influenced by history, culture, environment, and other factors. Before we start our topic, let's have this activity. What the peak? Guess the jumbled letters with the help of the provided pictures. Here is our first jumbled letters, and here are the pictures that will help you to decipher what is that word. Okay, I will give you 10 seconds to answer. Time's up. The answer for these jumbled letters is culture. Very good. For our next word. And here are the pictures. Now, I will give you 10 seconds to decipher what is the meaning of the jumbled letters. Time's up. The answer for these jumbled letters is history. Very good. Now, for our third jumbled letters. Here are the pictures. Now, I will give you 10 seconds to decipher what is the meaning of the jumbled letters. Time's up. The answer for these jumbled letters is environment. Very good. Now, for the last jumbled letters. Here are the pictures. Now, I will give you 10 seconds to answer. Time's up. The answer for these jumbled letters is economic. Very good. Now, let us recall all the 4 words that we have deciphered from the jumbled letters. We have here the culture, history, environment, and economic. Now, let us discuss what are those 4 words can affect our favorite stories. Let's have first the cultural influence. It may be demonstrated through human behavior, vocabulary, or language used, human emotions, or perspectives, and material items. In this story, How My Brother Leon Brought Home a Wife, we can see the cultural influence in various instances in the story. The story started with the recollection of an afternoon adventure in the barrio with a brother's fiancée. It is a story of a man introducing his city-born wife to his more provincial family. The main idea is Maria is being tested with Leon's family, especially his father, if she will be able to live a simple life in province away from the city. The author of the story is Manuel E. Arguilla, and most of his stories depict life in Barrio Nagrabcan, Bawang La Union, where he was born. His bond with his birthplace, forged by his feeling with the peasant folk, remains strong even after he moved to Manila. Now, let's have this historical influence. History is a branch of knowledge that records and explains past events connected with studying or representing things from the past. It is about what has happened in the life or development of a people, country, institution, etc. In the story, March of Death, historical influence is imminent, as it expresses the suffering of many Filipino in Bataan that marched by the time of Japanese occupation. Bienvenido and Santos, the author of the story, was a scholar of the Philippine Commonwealth government. When war in the Pacific came to the Philippines, he feared he would never see his family again, leading to a transformation in his sense of national consciousness and identity. Crisis changed the nature of his writing into a less carefree style to one mixing laughter and pain. Now, let's have the third one, the environmental influence. It pertains to the circumstance, object, or condition by which one is surrounded, aggregate of social and cultural conditions that influence the life of an individual or community. The environment can facilitate or discourage interactions among people, or it can influence people's behavior, mood, and motivation to act. The story, New Yorker in Tondo, depicts environmental influence as it is about a girl who grew in Tondo and went to New York for a year. She changed everything about her. The way she dressed, she talked and mingled with others. She even tried to change everything about her mother. Marcelino Agana Jr. was the playwright in 1958 who wrote one of the more popular Filipino comedies that have been produced many times through many years. His style of writing describes what kind of life was there in Tondo and how was it living in New York. Now, let's have the last one, economic influence. It is giving good value or return in relation to the money, time, or effort expended. One of the stories that illustrate economic influence is My Father Goes to Court. In this story, the rich family and the poor family are having conflict with each other. The rich man in this story was very selfish and does not want to socialize with the poor people in the community. So, he ended up being sick because he only cares about was his wealth and money. Carlos Bulusan effectively presented economic influence because most of his youth was spent in countryside as a farmer. It is during his youth that he and his family were economically impoverished by the rich and political elite, which became one of the main themes of his writing. And now, let's have this activity. I called it Story Influencer. In this activity, you are going to select one answer only that you think the best influence present in the passage. Number 1. Now, these rich man's servants were always frying and cooking something good, and the aroma of the food wafted down to us from the windows of the big house. From My Father Goes to Court by Carlos Bulusan. It is culture, history, environment, economic. I will give you 10 seconds to answer. Time's up. The answer is economic. Number 2. When the Americans recaptured the Philippines, they built an air base a few miles from our barrio. Yankee soldiers became a very common sight. This is from We Filipinos Are Mild Drinkers by Alejandro R. Roses. I will give you 10 seconds to choose. Time's up. The answer is history. Number 3. Dodong thought of himself he would tell his father about Taeyang when he got home after he had unhitched the carabao from the plow and led it to its shed and fed it. He was hesitant about saying it, but he wanted his father to know. This is from Footnote to Youth by Jose Garcia Villa. I will give you 10 seconds to answer. Time's up. The answer is economic. Number 4. Nana Emilia shivered once or twice, bowed her head, gripped her clasped hands between her thighs. There was a terrible hush. The remaining mats were unfolded in silence. The names, which were with infinite slowness revealed, seemed strange and stranger still. The color is not bright, but deathly dull. The separate letters, spelling out the names of the dead among them, did not seem to glow or shine with a festive sheen. This is from the Mats by Francisco Arciliana. Now, timer starts now. And the correct answer is culture. Number 5. In October, Quezon himself came for merienda. He had just appointed General MacArthur Field Marshal of the Philippine Army because of disturbing news from Nanking and Chusun. Quezon cursed the Americans for not taking him in their confidence. But like most gifted politicians, he had preternatural sense of danger. This is from the story At War's End by Ronnie V. Diaz. Timer starts now. Time's up. The correct answer is history. Number 6. We got to chat for a long time before the guest arrived. He told me about life in the US. He said Filipinos who are used to getting pampered would have a hard time adjusting to life there. This is from the story The Summer of My 17th Year by H.O. Santos. Timer starts now. Time's up. The correct answer is environment. Number 7. Go out. Go out and dance. If you really don't hate me for this separation, go out and dance. One of the men will see you dance well. He will like your dancing. He will marry you. Who knows but that with him you will be luckier than you were with me. This is from The Wedding Dance by Amador Dagoyo. Timer starts now. Time's up. The correct answer is culture. Number 8. Harvest time is almost ended. Vidal. I must be strong also, the other prayed. Soon, the planting season will be on us, and we shall have need of many carabaos. Milia's father has 5. You have but to ask her, and Milia will accept you anytime. Why do you delay? This is from the story Harvest by Loreto Paras Sulit. Timer starts now. Time's up, and the answer is environment. Number 9. Look, if you're so fucking chicken, you can get out from the car before we get to the border. You can fucking walk across. You have papers. Why don't you let us take that chance? Just make sure you have enough money to bus fare to LA. Because I wouldn't want you back in my car. Gosh, I thought I knew you better. This is from Fireworks by H.O. Santos. Timer starts now. Time's up. And the answer is environment. Last number, number 10. San Jose Street, Ibahay, Doray told me that on Holy Week, the townspeople follow a certain tradition. Her Lola Conching owned a Santo Enchero, the dead Christ. It had been with the family for years. Every year, during Holy Week, they would bring out the statue and everybody would participate in the preparation. Some people would be in charge of dressing up the statue, while others would take care of decorating the carriage and would carry it through the streets. This is from the story, The Old Woman of the Candles by Kevin Piamonte. Timer starts now. And the answer is culture. Did you enjoy our last activity? I hope you got good grades from that. Now, let's go to another activities entitled My Influence. In this activity, you're going to select one answer from the choices. Are you ready? Let's start. Number 1. It is a branch of knowledge that records and explains past events connected with studying or representing things from the past. A. Culture. B. History. C. Environment. D. Economic. Go. Time's up. The correct answer is history. Number 2. This story, How My Brother Leon Brought Home a Wife, is an example of story that has A. cultural influence, B. Historical influence, C. Economic influence, or D. Environmental influence. Go. Time's up. The answer is cultural influence. Number 3. It pertains to the circumstance, object, or condition by which one is surrounded. Aggregate of social and cultural conditions that influence the life of an individual or community. A. Cultural influence. B. Historical influence. C. Economic influence. D. Environmental influence. Go. Time's up. The answer is environmental influence. Number 4. Which story has an economic influence? A. My father goes to court. B. How my brother Leon brought home a wife. C. March of Death. D. New Yorker in Tondo. Go. Time's up. The correct answer is my father goes to court. Last number for this activity, number 5. It may be demonstrated through human behavior, vocabulary, or language used, human emotions or perspectives, and material items. A. Cultural influence. B. Historical influence. C. Economic influence. D. Environmental influence. Go. Time's up. The correct answer is cultural influence. I hope you got perfect score from the previous activity, and I hope that you learned well the different influences that we may encounter in different stories. Now, let's have this another activity entitled Writing Influencer. In this activity, you are going to select one influence and try to make a short selection that has an influence of your choice. Are you ready? Let's start. By the way, before you make your own selection, please consider this criteria. I hope you enjoy our today's lesson. See you tomorrow. God bless and thank you.